Hi guys, good morning. This is Dan. Welcome to my channel, Engelgeist. For those of you that are new, welcome. For those of you that are returning, welcome back. Those of you that support me over at Patreon, thank you so very, very much. For those of you that want to support me over at Patreon, you can feel free to go over to patreon.com, choose a subscription level, and sign up for it. It helps to keep the daily forecast available for everyone. So those of you that watch on YouTube on the daily, thank those Patreon subscribers. They help make this work valuable, or they help me understand that this work is valuable and keep me going, as do all my viewers really. But also, if you want to support the channel, you can follow my Instagram at Engelgeist333. You can like, share, comment, or subscribe to the channel and just follow it, watch the videos, and give it a thumbs up if you don't mind. It's a huge help too. What else? If you're interested in booking a private reading, I am available for those. You can message my Facebook business page, and I can answer any questions there. This is the daily forecast. It is the intention behind it is for the greatest, for the highest good for the greater collective, right? So it is sort of a timeless message. It's available to you whenever you need it. And this one is actually set up for June 19th of 2020, but it's not mandatory that you view it on that date. You might see it on a different date, and that would mean that you might be more in line to it at that point. So don't turn it off just because you see the date. Let's see what's going on with the energy. We had that Sun card yesterday. We also got that 5 of Rings. We got 2 cards yesterday because they were stuck together. So I feel like there's some interesting stuff going on. The Sun is definitely bringing about some energy, some shift, some change. We also had that Awakened Earth card the day before, and yesterday's grounding stone was Nature, which I thought was interesting after the fact. After I shot the video, I noticed that little connection between the cards and the grounding stone. There's definitely this focus on this connection to ourselves and then to the earth, and the management of those two things. I know that sounds a little out there, but that's kind of what I'm seeing in these cards lately. Let's see what's going on. What do people need to know? Oh wow, it's back. Alright, so we have the Two of Swords, which is indecision and avoidance. The Two of Swords is always depicted with a woman that can't see. She's usually blindfolded behind 2 swords crossing in front of her. Let me just look at this for a minute. I just sort of feel like this is resistance for some of you, not for all of you. So for those of you that don't necessarily feel any sort of mental resistance to what's going on in their immediate environment or in the world around them, this message may not be for you today. This might be for those last minute holdouts or the people that are struggling right now mentally, that are trying to make sense of stuff, that are trying to trust their intuition but maybe don't. That are struggling with sort of thoughts or feeling like they don't have all of the information. All of that would be this card, right? To me, there's a strength in this card. I mean, I will say that. It's sort of like, but there's also an adversity, right? There's these 2 swords kind of crossing one another. And the sliver of the moon, sort of the intuition rises up above it and is trying to sort of speak to us, but maybe the message isn't getting through. Maybe we're having a hard time receiving the message. What I do want to say is that if anything, maybe give yourself a break, allow yourself some ease. Don't challenge yourself too hard right now. We may be being challenged by our outside environment in ways that we've not been challenged before, and that's sort of making it a bit more of a struggle for us, or we might feel a little bit more guarded. Especially mentally, like we might feel a little bit more resistance towards things that we see or behaviors in others that we don't like. Our patience may be a little bit thinner. Also, swords represents the element of air and the intellect, right? But we've just gone into Mercury Retrograde as of yesterday. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we have 6 planets retrograde currently. And retrogrades don't necessarily have to equate to bad things. It's just sort of, if we're mindful of them and we utilize the time right around them, and we kind of hopefully work with them versus against them, we end up doing better, I believe. We get into sort of that flow where it allows us to revisit things that we sort of maybe didn't get cleared out or dealt with or healed or whatever in that moment, you know, in the first time around kind of thing. So we might find ourselves revisiting things, thinking things over, mulling things over. There could be a definite feeling of not having all of the information or all of the facts so that we can make a clear decision. And that could just be the retrograde. And to me, that's sort of like this mountain and these clouds, right? It's always that sort of idea of being sort of clouded or blocked. And then these two swords coming together, to me, almost feel like us sort of trying to protect ourselves or solidify ourselves, sticking our heels in the ground and bracing our minds or our thoughts, our belief systems into holding tight in a holding pattern and going into the state of resistance. That's where the avoidance in this card, you see the word indecision and avoidance. The avoidance is us trying to remain strong in our thoughts or our beliefs while we sort of traverse situations or you know, people and their behaviors, whatever, that we don't necessarily agree with or like or understand completely. The Two of Swords, to me, also offers this idea to understand ourselves better. Twos always represent sort of, coupling, in my opinion. And so, for me, when I see twos, I think about the deepening of the relationship with ourselves at the intellectual or mental level, right? The sort of looking and picking over our thoughts, right? And some of us might be shoring up and digging our heels in, right? But some of us might also be just sort of looking at everything while we're doing that, while we're creating a safe space in our mind for us to kind of deal with what might be going on in our immediate environment. Now, this card could also represent miscommunication, right? And especially with that Mercury retrograde. I don't want to put that out there for everybody, like it's just assuming you're all going to have miscommunication, because like I said, you don't have to in a retrograde. A retrograde can just be there to teach you, right? And this card to me feels like sort of that. It teaches us through, you know, the strength of these two crossed swords. We have to also look at the fact that, are we really working from our best, you know, mental state? Are we really working from our best most open, intuitive space? Or are we working from a space of resistance, reluctance, avoidance, frustration? Those would be things that I would be on the lookout for today. And it's funny to me because that Sun card from yesterday was so sort of powerful, right? We did have that Five of Discs, which kind of is like that sort of idea of the Five of Pentacles, or seeking out some sort of material change, but maybe not knowing how to go about it today. You know, mentally, that's this sort of Two of Swords energy. Or feeling like we can't necessarily go about it with ease, that we have to be maybe defensive or protected. And sometimes when we go out into situations like that with that energy already in play, we just sort of attract those very situations that we're trying to avoid. So keeping that in mind for some of you too. I feel like some of you might need to hear that or be reminded of that. There is this moon above, which to me is this idea of intuition. Like, we can trust that. I feel like it might be hard to hear or hard to connect to, but we need to allow ourselves the opportunity to connect to that if we can. We're heading into that Eight of Cups energy. Not quite yet, though. We're still in that four, sort of, some of you might be in that Eight of Cups. Kind of transferring over between that stickiness of that Four of Pentacles, that holding on too tight. That might be manifesting in this sort of resistance that we see in this Two of Swords, this mental resistance. I would say, this is more advice than a read, but I would say ideally we would want to let this go. We would want to open up even to things that we don't understand or that don't make sense to us. Oh, wow. So the perspective, none of this matters. Zoom out, common ground, guys. I might need to practice this myself. This could be for me personally. I'm just going to use this as an example. This might need to be me staying off of Facebook altogether. You know, unplugging. Sort of remembering that in the grand scheme of things, my world or my life is really, it's funny, it's like this macro micro thing, right? We have this huge impact in our immediate environment, and that can ripple out into the world and the energy and all of that, and I think that it does have a huge effect and we do make a difference. But then again, there's so many of us and the planet is so large, the solar system is so large. When you really zoom out and you begin to think about it, it's kind of like it is sort of inconsequential. And I'm not trying to say that anybody's not important, but really ultimately a lot of what's going on in the world, if we just sort of let go of or allow to be and trust that it will heal, there is this opportunity to give it sort of this space, right? All of this black negative space, right? All of this openness for possibility. Here, there's not a lot of openness. And the only thing that we have that's black here is the intuitive mind here, represented in this sliver of the moon. So to me, it's like as we bring this in and expand this intuition, we can actually sort of breathe a little bit, get a better perspective, allow in a little bit, you know, of ease for ourselves today. Let me read perspective just because it's been a few days. We've seen this card, I want to say 3 times this month. So, and there's a lot to, you know, pull our attention right now into sort of, I don't want to say mess with our perspective, but there's a lot out there that sort of challenges us right now, right? Just changes that are challenging, you know, whether we're consciously aware of it or not, these things do challenge us. So, to me, this is like this idea of zooming out and kind of not looking at the, you know, smaller, more frustrating or fearful based things right now. So perspective, none of this matters. Zoom out, common ground. Take a step back and look at the bigger picture of your life. Step away from the blinkered vision and reactive frame of mind of me against them. This is the Two of Swords energies, guys. Change your perspective, shift your point of view, and zoom out, out, out. We are but a speck of dust in the universe, yet we think everything revolves around us. We see the planet as ours to own and conquer, pillaging the land and setting ourselves up for eventual extinction. We build fences and walls and create invisible borders. Mother Earth doesn't need us to survive, but we need her. It's time to wake up. A new perspective is urgently needed. Again, we're talking about Mother Earth. We had the activated Earth card. We had the Nature Stone yesterday. This is about our internal connection and then our connection to the planet, guys, this week. I'm telling you, there's a theme here. We become so lost in our individual experience that we don't realize that most of the things that keep us awake at night are actually distractions. We're wasting our precious time and resources fighting each other when we should be coming together to heal what's been severed. This moment is a breath in the timeline of your life. This life is a fleeting moment in the tapestry of your soul's experience. Your soul's experience is a flash in the timeline of the known universe, and the known universe is a grain of sand in the unknown universe. Take a moment to see the bigger picture, to find common ground, to find deep compassion in your heart, to gain a greater perspective of humanity in this fleeting moment in the timeline of your soul's existence, in the timeline of all that is, was, and ever will be. This soul inquiry is, how have you been called to change your perspective? And there's a bit of a struggle with these two cards today. I have to say that because this perspective is asking us to expand beyond what maybe feels safe or comfortable. That Two of Swords energy wants us to say sort of, guarded in our thoughts. That might be what we're trying to avoid is accessing that higher perspective or that more open mind that allows us to sort of let in different schools of thought or different opportunities of behavior, other people's perceptions. Just because we allow them in doesn't mean that we have to adopt them. But not allowing them in does mean that we will have to struggle. right? Let's look to the grounding stone and see what the grounding stone offers us for this day. What do we need to ground in for this day? What would be the clarification? So to laugh. Stone is laugh. So we want to ground in, probably find some humor, find some joy, some laughter. This is going to ease up and open up these two swords. This will allow us to be more present, more available, more positive in nature, and probably allow us to loosen up our perspective and allow some sort of a higher vibrational energy into our space today. I think that's what we are needing. You know, remember, we're seeking out that clarity this week, guys. Let's not lose sight for that. All right, so that is your forecast for the week. I mean, for the day. Join me tomorrow for the next forecast, and we'll see where this all goes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. I love you and have a great day. Bye-bye.